They said the National Youth Service Corps was about serving the fatherland. They said it was about unity. But nobody told me that some parts of this country are not meant to be found. My name is David, and if you are listening to this recording, it means my service year is over. Or maybe it means I never left. It all started with the call-up letter. I was posted to a state in the Middle Belt. I won't mention the name. I don't want anyone else going there to look for proof. My place of primary assignment, my PPA, was a village called Odo-Eri. I checked Google Maps. It wasn't there. I asked the local government inspector, the LGI, at the orientation camp. He just looked at me with dull, tired eyes and said, "Just take the bus to the final junction, then take an Okada. You will find it." The journey took 7 hours from the state capital. The roads turned from asphalt to potholes, and then from potholes to pure red dust. The commercial bus driver dropped me at a junction where the trees were so tall they blocked out the sun. He didn't even turn off his engine. He just pointed down a narrow bush path and drove off, leaving me in a cloud of exhaust smoke. I found an Okada rider, an old man with tribal marks deep on his cheeks. His skin was leathery from years under the African sun. When I told him Odo-Eri, he stopped smiling. He didn't argue. He just nodded and told me to get on. We rode for 40 minutes into the deep bush. The air got colder. The noise of the birds and the crickets stopped completely. Then the Okada stopped. We were at a small wooden bridge over a stream that looked black and still. The old man pointed across the bridge. "I cannot cross," he said in broken pidgin. "Okada no day enter Odo-Eri. You walk." He turned his bike around and sped off as if the devil himself was chasing him. I adjusted my heavy jungle boots and walked across the bridge. My khaki trousers were already stained with red dust. As I stepped into the village, I expected poverty. I expected suffering. But Odo-Eri was perfect, too perfect. The mud houses were smooth and painted with traditional patterns in white chalk. The ground was swept clean. Not a single leaf was out of place. And the people, as I walked to the village square, people came out to watch. They were dark-skinned, beautiful people. The men wore matching fabrics, and the women had intricate braids. But they were silent. They just watched me with unblinking eyes. They didn't wave. They didn't smile. They just stared at the stranger in the white and green uniform. Then an old man stepped forward. He must have been the village head, the Baale. He wore a heavy chieftaincy attire and beads that looked like real coral. "Welcome, Corper," he boomed. His voice was loud, breaking the silence. "We have been waiting for you." I was confused. "Waiting for me, sir? But I didn't tell anyone I was coming today." The Baale laughed. "We always know when the government sends us a gift. Come, you must be tired." He led me to a house near the edge of the forest. It was a concrete building, unlike the mud houses. It had fresh paint. "This is the Corper's lodge," the Baale said. "It is for you, only for you." I walked inside. The room was cold. It smelled of camphor and old paper. There was a bed with a mattress that looked brand new. A reading table. A kitchen with a kerosene stove already filled. "Thank you, sir," I said, feeling relieved. "This is very generous. Is there another Corper here?" My posting letter said there were 2 of us. The Baale's smile faltered for a second, just a microsecond. Then it returned wider than before. "No," he said softly, "the last one, he finished his service. He left." You are the only one now. Please, rest. My wife will bring you pounded yam. But listen to me, my son." He stepped closer. His eyes were milky with age, but they felt sharp. "In Odo-Eri we have traditions. We are a peaceful people, but the forest behind this lodge, that is the king's forest. You must never enter it, and you must never be outside your door after 7 p.m. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," I stammered. "Curfew, 7 p.m. I understand." That first night the food they brought was delicious. Pounded yam and a goosey soup with bushmeat. I ate like a hungry lion. But as night fell, the silence returned. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was a heavy silence. I looked at my wristwatch. It was 7:15 p.m. I was safe inside. I decided to unpack my bag. I took out my NYSC crested vest, my extra khaki trousers, and my books. I opened the drawer of the wooden reading table to put my Bible inside, but the drawer wasn't empty. There was a book inside, an old, dusty exercise book, the kind we used in primary school. On the cover, written in blue biro, were the words, NYSC Weekly Logbook. I picked it up. It felt brittle. I opened the first page. Name, Michael Okoro. State Code, 04-1345. Year 2004. 2004? That was 20 years ago. The Baale said the last Corper just left. I started reading the entries. The handwriting was neat at first. Week 1, arrival. The village is nice. The people are friendly. The Baale gave me a whole house. Week 2, I started teaching at the community school. The children are smart, but they are quiet. They don't play during break time. Week 4, something is wrong. I tried to listen to the radio today, but there is no signal. I tried to leave to go to the bank in the town, but the Okada man never came. I turned the pages faster. The handwriting became messy, shaky. Week 8. I saw the Baale today. He was wearing the same clothes he wore the day I arrived. Not similar clothes, the same clothes. Same stain on the collar. Week 10. I asked about the Corper before me. A girl named Tolu. They told me she finished and left. But today I found a hair ribbon under the bed. It had fresh blood on it. I froze. I looked down at the floor under my own bed. It was clean. I turned to the last entry in the book. It wasn't dated. It was just scrawled in big, frantic letters that tore through the paper. IT is a loop. They don't age. They don't die. They just need new blood to keep the illusion. The 7 p.m. rule is not to keep you in. It is to keep them out. If you are reading this, run. Do not eat the food. I dropped the book. My stomach churned. I looked at the empty bowl of pounded yam on the table. I had eaten every bite. Suddenly, I heard a sound. Tap, 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 tap. It was coming from the window. The wooden shutter was closed. I checked my watch. 7:30 p.m. Corper, a voice whispered from outside. It sounded like a child's voice. Corper, come out and teach us. School is open. I froze. My blood turned to ice in my veins. School is open? It was 7:30 in the night. In a village without electricity, the darkness outside was absolute. It was thick, like black velvet. I didn't answer. I backed away from the window slowly, trying not to make a sound on the concrete floor. My boots felt heavy. My whole body felt heavy. The pounded yam I had eaten, it felt like a stone sitting in my stomach, a stone that was slowly pulling me down. Tap, tap. The sound came again. But this time it was harder, more urgent. Corper David, the voice called. It wasn't a child's voice anymore. It sounded like two voices speaking at once, one young, one very old and dry. "The Baale is waiting for you. Come out. We want to show you the curriculum." I grabbed the kerosene lantern and ran to the bedroom door. I slammed the bolt shut. I dragged a heavy wooden reading table and pushed it against the door. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would break them. I sat on the bed, clutching the old logbook from 2004. I read the warning again. Do not eat the food. My head started to spin. The room began to tilt. Shadows stretched out from the corners of the room, looking like long, thin fingers trying to grab me. I realized then that the food wasn't just poison. It was a sedative or something spiritual. They wanted me to sleep. They wanted me to be helpless. I bit my tongue. Hard. The sharp pain and the metallic taste of blood kept me awake. I couldn't sleep. If I slept, I knew I wouldn't wake up as myself. The knocking continued for hours. Sometimes at the window, sometimes at the front door, and sometimes, God, sometimes it sounded like it was coming from the roof, like giant lizards scurrying across the zinc sheets. I didn't close my eyes until the first crow of the rooster. When morning came, the silence returned. The sun streamed through the cracks in the window shutter. I pushed the table away and opened the door. The village looked normal. The women were sweeping. Smoke was rising from cooking fires. It was so peaceful that I almost believed I had imagined everything. Almost. I walked out of the lodge. My head was pounding, but I needed answers. I needed to see if Michael Okoro's logbook was telling the truth. I needed to find the school. I walked towards the center of the village. The villagers greeted me as I passed. "Good morning, Corper," they said. "Well done, Corper." But their smiles were identical. Every single one of them had the exact same smile, showing the exact same amount of teeth. It was like looking at a photocopy of a photocopy. I found the community primary school near the stream. It was a block of 3 classrooms with no windows, just open spaces. I walked into primary 4. The children were there, about 20 of them. They were sitting at their wooden desks, hands folded on top, backs perfectly straight. They weren't making a sound, no whispering, no playing, just staring at the blackboard. There was a teacher at the front, a tall man wearing a vintage bell-bottom trouser and a shirt with a collar that was too wide-fashioned from the 1970s or 80s. He was writing on the board with chalk. "Good morning, sir," I said, stepping into the class. The teacher stopped writing. He didn't turn around immediately. He finished the sentence. "The capital of Nigeria is Lagos." He turned around slowly. "Welcome, Corper David. We are happy you are finally awake." I looked at the board again. "Sir," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "the capital of Nigeria. It has been Abuja since 1991. The teacher smiled. That same plastic smile. In Odo-Eri we respect history. We do not rush into the future like you city people. I looked at the children. They were looking at me, but their eyes were glazed over. They didn't blink. I walked closer to the front row. There was a little girl there. She looked like she was about 10 years old. "What is your name?" I asked her. "My name is Bisi," she said. Her voice was flat, monotone. "Bisi," I said gently. "What year is it?" She didn't answer. She just looked at the teacher. The teacher nodded. "It is the year of the harvest," she said. I looked around the classroom. On the wall, there was a calendar. It was yellow with age. I walked over to it and dusted it off. The year printed on it was 1994, but that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was the picture on the calendar. It was a group photo of the village, and in the front row of the photo, standing next to the Baale, was the teacher, the man standing right behind me. He looked exactly the same. He hadn't aged a single day in 30 years. Same shirt, same trousers, same face. I stepped back, bumping into a desk. "Who are you people?" I whispered. The teacher laughed. It was a dry, cracking sound. "We are the preserved ones, David. The world outside, it rots, it ages, it dies. But here in Odo-Eri, we stay fresh, we stay young." He took a step toward me. "But freshness requires a preservative," he said. "It requires energy. Every few years, the energy fades, and the government, in its infinite wisdom, sends us a new battery. A young, vibrant youth service member, full of life, full of future." My blood ran cold. I wasn't a teacher here. I was a battery. I turned and ran out of the classroom. I didn't look back. I sprinted past the smiling villagers, past the Baale's palace. I ran straight back to the Corper's lodge. I burst into my room and locked the door. I grabbed my bag. I needed to leave. Now, I would walk through the forest if I had to. I didn't care about the Okada. I started throwing my clothes into the bag. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely zip it. Then I saw it. On the table where I had left the empty bowl of pounded yam last night. The bowl was full again, steaming hot pounded yam. Fresh egusi soup, but I had locked the door. I had barricaded it with the table. No one could have come in. And next to the food was a note, written on the same paper as the logbook. The ink was wet. "We know you didn't eat dinner, David. You must be hungry. Eat. You need your strength for the ceremony tonight." I looked at the window. The sun was still shining, but the light was changing. It was turning a sickly shade of orange. I looked at my watch. It was 12 p.m., noon, but outside the sun was setting fast. Time was moving differently, or maybe time was running out. I grabbed the logbook again. I flipped to the middle pages, looking for anything Michael Okoro had written about escaping. Entry 45. The forest is a trick. I tried to walk out yesterday. I walked north for 6 hours. I saw trees I recognized. I saw rocks I recognized. At the end of 6 hours, I walked right back into the village square. Space bends here. You cannot walk out. I slammed the book shut. If I couldn't walk out, and the Okada wouldn't come, I was trapped. Then I remembered something. The LGI at the orientation camp. He had given me a number. In case of emergency, he had said. I thought he was just being protocol. I pulled out my phone. No service, of course. But wait, Michael's logbook. He mentioned a radio. Week 4. I tried to listen to the radio today. I looked around the room. In the corner, covered by a dusty cloth, was an old battery-powered radio. I ran to it. I turned it on. Static hiss. I turned the dial. Nothing but white noise. I was about to give up when I heard a voice cutting through the static. It was faint, distant, but I could hear it. Report at the junction over... It was a police radio frequency. Or maybe road safety. I held the radio up, walking around the room, trying to find a better signal. I climbed onto the table. I held the antenna up to the roof. Unit 4. Patrolling the Lokoya axis, I screamed into the radio, even though I knew it was a receiver, not a transmitter. Help me. I am in Odo-Eri. Help. Suddenly the static stopped. The room went silent. The radio went dead. And then a voice came out of the speaker. It wasn't the police. It was the Baale's voice, clear, crisp, inside my room. "David," the radio said, "why are you trying to leave? The party is just about to start." I stared at the radio in horror. The Baale was not in the room, but his voice was coming from the speaker as clearly as if he were whispering in my ear. "The party is just about to start," the voice repeated. I grabbed the radio and smashed it against the wall. Plastic shards flew everywhere. The batteries rolled across the floor, but the voice didn't stop. It just moved. Now it was coming from the walls themselves, a low, vibrating hum that shook the dust off the ceiling. I stumbled back, my head spinning. The sickness from the food was getting worse. I felt heavy, like gravity had doubled in the room. I caught a glimpse of myself in the small mirror hanging above the reading table. I screamed. The face looking back at me was mine, but it wasn't the face I woke up with. My eyes were sunken. There were lines around my mouth that weren't there yesterday. My skin looked dry, ash gray. I wasn't just tired. I was aging. The teacher was right. They weren't just using me as a battery. They were draining me dry. Every hour in Odo-Eri was a year of my life. Suddenly the hum in the walls stopped. A new sound replaced it. Drums, doom, doom, ka-doom. It was the sound of heavy talking drums, the gangan. But the rhythm wasn't celebratory. It was aggressive. War drums. I looked out the window. The sun had vanished completely. The village was now lit by hundreds of torches. I saw the villagers, the same men and women who had smiled at me in the morning. They were no longer smiling. They were wearing masks. Traditional wooden masks with twisted, angry faces. They were marching towards the Corper's lodge, and in the front, carried on a palanquin, was the Baale. He looked younger than he did yesterday. His skin was glowing with youth. He was feeding on me already. I knew I couldn't stay in the lodge. If they caught me inside, I was dead. Or worse, I would become part of the loop forever. I remembered the Baale's warning from the first day. The forest behind this lodge, that is the king's forest. You must never enter it. If they didn't want me to go there, it was the only place I could go. I grabbed my torchlight. I didn't bother with my bag. I kicked open the back door of the kitchen. It led straight into the thick bush. The air in the forest was stagnant. It smelled of rotting leaves and something metallic, like old coins or blood. I sprinted into the darkness. The thorns tore at my NYSC khaki trousers. The branches whipped my face, but I didn't stop. Behind me I heard the chanting start. It was loud. 1,000 voices speaking in a dialect I didn't understand. They weren't chasing me. They were hurting me. I ran for what felt like hours, but my watch said only 10 minutes had passed. My legs were burning. My lungs felt like they were filled with smoke. Suddenly the ground beneath me disappeared. I slid down a steep embankment, tumbling through dirt and roots until I hit the bottom of a ravine. I lay there for a moment, gasping for air, shining my light around. I wasn't alone. The ravine was filled with clothes. Piles and piles of clothes. I crawled closer, my hands shaking as I directed the beam of light onto the fabric. They were uniforms. Green and white. There were hundreds of them. NYSC crested vests. Khaki jackets. Jungle boots. I saw a jacket with a name tag, TOLU2003. I saw another, AHMED 1998, and another that looked like it was from the 1980s, the fabric almost completely disintegrated. This wasn't just a dump site. It was a mass grave of youth. Every corper sent to Odo-Eri for the last 40 years ended up here. They stripped them of their youth and threw their empty husks into this pit. I scrambled backward, terrified. I needed to climb out. I needed to keep moving. But then I saw something moving in the pile of clothes. A hand reached out from under a stack of old khakis. It was a skeletal hand, skin hanging loose on the bone. Help me. I froze. I shone the light on the face. It was a young man, or he used to be. Now he looked like he was 100 years old. His hair was white. His eyes were blind with cataracts. But he was wearing a uniform that looked brand new. The tag on his chest read, Michael Okoro -2004. Michael, the writer of the logbook. He wasn't dead. He was still here, trapped in the loop, kept alive just enough to suffer. Michael? I whispered. He turned his head toward the light. Run, he wheezed. His voice sounded like dry leaves rubbing together. The junction, the tree. You have to cut the tree. What tree? I asked, grabbing his hand. Come with me. No, he coughed. I am empty, but you still have time. The Iroko tree at the village center. It is the heart. Cut it. Break the loop. Before I could ask more, the drums stopped. Silence fell over the forest. Then, from the top of the ravine, a bright light shone down on us. I looked up. Standing at the edge of the pit, looking down at us, was the teacher. He was holding a torch. Naughty students, he said, his voice echoing in the pit. Cutting class is a punishable offense. He dropped the torch. It fell in slow motion, tumbling down toward the pile of dry old clothes. Whoosh! The fire ignited instantly. The dry fabric caught fire like gasoline. The heat was intense. Run! Michael screamed, using the last of his strength to push me toward the other side of the ravine. I scrambled up the dirt wall, digging my fingernails into the mud. The fire roared behind me, consuming Michael, consuming the history of all the stolen lives. I pulled myself over the edge and rolled onto the forest floor. I stood up and looked back toward the village. The fire in the ravine was creating a massive distraction. The villagers would be watching the flames. Michael said the tree was the heart, the Iroko tree in the center. I had to go back. I had to go back into the belly of the beast. I turned around and ran back toward the village. But this time I wasn't running away. I was running to end it. I ran back through the dense tropical forest, the orange glow of the fire behind me, lighting up the green palm leaves. My dark skin was covered in sweat and soot, my green NYSC khaki trousers torn by thorns. I didn't stop. I ran until my jungle boots hit the hard red earth of the village square. The village was in chaos. The black villagers in their colorful Ankara wrappers were running towards the smoke. But not everyone had left. In the center of the village stood the massive Iroko tree. Its roots were twisted and thick, digging deep into the African soil. I had walked past it 10 times, but now I saw it for what it really was. It wasn't wood, it was flesh. The dark bark pulsed like a giant heart. Thump, 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 thump. Thick red veins ran up the trunk, pumping a glowing liquid into the leaves. Standing at the base of the tree was the Baale. He wasn't an old man anymore. The transformation was terrifying. His dark African skin was smooth and tight. His muscles bulged under his white chieftaincy robes. He looked like a young Nigerian warrior in his prime. He was laughing, his black arms spread wide, absorbing the energy that the tree was sucking from the earth. I needed a weapon. I scanned the nearby mud huts. To my left was a blacksmith's workshop. I sprinted towards it. My hands fumbled over rusty tools till I found a heavy, rusted axe with a wooden handle. I gripped the axe with both hands, my knuckles turning white against the dark wood. I stepped out into the light of the square. "Hey!" I screamed. The Baale turned around. His eyes were glowing red, contrasting sharply with his deep black skin. He looked amused. "The battery returns," he smiled. His voice was deep and powerful. "Did you come to surrender, Corper? Did you realize there is nowhere to go?" "I came to disconnect you," I yelled. I didn't run at him. I ran at the tree. "Stop him." The Baale roared. From the shadows, two huge, muscular black guards materialized. They had deep tribal marks cut into their cheeks. They charged at me with inhuman speed. I didn't stop. I swung the axe wildly as the first guard reached me. The blunt side hit his broad chest. He stumbled back, but he didn't fall. I ducked under his heavy black arm and threw myself at the base of the tree. I raised the axe high above my head. "No." The Baale screamed, his white robes flowing, as he ran towards me. I brought the axe down with every ounce of strength I had left. Thwack! A spray of hot, red liquid exploded from the gash in the tree. It hit my dark face, blinding me. It smelled of copper. It was blood, human blood. The tree screamed. It was a high-pitched shriek that shook the thatched roofs of the village huts. "Kill him!" The Baale shrieked. He was close now. I wiped the blood from my eyes and swung again. The axe bit deeper into the fleshy bark. Suddenly a hand grabbed my throat. The Baale lifted me off the ground with one hand. His grip was like iron. My feet dangled in the air, my jungle boots kicking uselessly. The axe slipped from my fingers and fell to the red dirt. "You foolish boy," the Baale hissed, his face inches from mine. "This tree feeds us. It keeps us eternal." He threw me against the trunk of the tree. As my back hit the bleeding bark, I felt the wood softening, turning into a thick, sap-like glue, trying to absorb me into the trunk. The Baale walked towards me, pulling a ceremonial dagger from his waist. He raised it high. "For the harvest," he chanted. I looked down. The axe was just out of reach. But my leg was free. I swung my leg out, hooking the handle of the axe with my boot. I kicked it upwards. I caught the handle with my left hand and swung it sideways. Crunch! The axe buried itself deep into the Baale's side. He froze. The dagger fell from his hand. He looked down at the axe handle sticking out of his ribs. He gasped, and black sludge poured out of the wound instead of blood. Thick, oily tar covered his expensive white lace fabric. He fell to his knees, and as he hit the ground, his skin began to ripple. The youth melted away. His black hair turned white instantly. His skin dried up and cracked like old leather. In seconds he went from a young warrior to a skeleton, and then to a pile of dust. The villagers stopped running. They watched their leader crumble into an empty pile of clothes. But the tree was still alive. Its roots burst out of the red ground like snakes. I grabbed the axe from the pile of dust. I turned back to the tree. "End of service," I screamed. I chopped and chopped and chopped. I swung the rusty axe one last time. With a sound like thunder cracking, the massive trunk of the Iroko tree split open. The tree didn't fall like wood. It collapsed like rotting flesh. Thick, black smoke poured out of the stump, smelling of burning hair and sulfur. The ground beneath my jungle boots shook violently, throwing me onto the red earth. As the tree died, the illusion of Odo-Eri died with it. I watched in horror as the beautiful village transformed before my eyes. The smooth, white-painted mud walls cracked and crumbled instantly. The shiny zinc roofs turned brown with rust and collapsed inward. The pristine village square became a graveyard of overgrown weeds and debris. And the villagers, the dark-skinned men and women standing around me, screamed. But it wasn't a scream of pain. It was the sound of air escaping from old lungs. Their beautiful black skin turned gray and flaked away like ash in the wind. Their colorful Ankara fabrics fell to the ground, empty. In seconds there was no one left. Just piles of dusty clothes and old bones scattered across the overgrown village square. The energy that had been holding them together was gone. The loop was broken. My head spun. The exhaustion hit me like a physical blow. I tried to stand up, but my legs wouldn't support me. I crawled away from the rotting stump of the tree, dragging my torn khaki trousers through the dirt. I crawled until I reached the edge of the forest, and then darkness took me. I don't know how long I lay there. It could have been hours. It could have been days. I woke up to the sound of a horn, a loud, impatient truck horn. I opened my eyes. I wasn't in the village. I wasn't in the forest. I was lying in a ditch on the side of a tarred expressway. The sun was hot on my face. A yellow commercial bus had pulled over. The driver, a sweaty Nigerian man with a towel around his neck, was looking down at me. Passengers were leaning out of the windows, shouting in pidgin English. "Oga, you day okay? You resemble Madman O." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. I looked down at myself. My NYSC uniform was in tatters. My white-crested vest was brown with dried mud and blood. My jungle boots were worn out, the sawdust flapping loose. "Help!" I croaked. The driver and a male passenger helped me up. They looked at me with fear and pity. They drove me to the nearest police station in the state capital. The police didn't believe my story. They said I had been missing for 3 months. They said I must have wandered into the bush and lost my mind. They said there is no village called Odo-Eri on the map. They gave me water and food. They called my parents. But the real horror didn't hit me until I went to the bathroom to wash the red dirt off my face. I stood in front of the cracked mirror above the sink. I lifted my trembling hands to wash my face. I stopped. The man staring back at me was wearing my torn uniform, but he wasn't 24 years old. His dark skin was wrinkled. There were deep bags under his eyes. Patches of gray hair were visible in his black afro. I looked 40 years old. The village, the tree, the Baale, even though I destroyed them, they had taken their payment. They had taken 15 years of my life in just 3 days. I am back home now. My mother cries when she looks at me. She doesn't understand why her young son came back looking like an old man. The NYSC sent me my discharge certificate by post. They exempted me from the rest of the service year on medical grounds. I keep the certificate in a drawer. I don't look at it. Sometimes when I walk past a construction site and smell wet cement, or when I see a Corps member in their khaki uniform, I get the shakes. And sometimes in my dreams I am back in Odo-Eri. The mud houses are beautiful, the pounded yam is hot, and the Baale is smiling at me, waiting for me to eat. My name is David. My service year is over. But if you get a posting letter to a village that isn't on Google Maps, if the Okada rider refuses to cross the bridge, turn back, burn the letter, because some paths in this country lead to places where the sun never sets and the hungry earth never sleeps.